Next step is to mark 1/2 inch seam allowance on the wrong side of the right back skirt panel. Next step is to mark a perpendicular line at 7.5 inches, which is the length of the zipper opening plus 1/2 inch for seam allowance. The marking is done on the wrong side of the right back panel because when stitching, this side will be up and the wrong side of the left back panel will be touching the feed dog while stitching. Next step is to pin baste the center back seam allowance, matching the skirt yoke seam line. These skirt yoke seam lines should be lined up and pin vertically at that intersection. After pinning, double check to make sure that the skirt and yoke seam lines are lined up. To hold the layers together, pin baste where the seam allowances are. Pin perpendicular to the seam allowance. This way you can stitch as close to the pin as possible before removing the pin. After pinning, the next step is stitching. A machine basting stitch will be done from the top edge of the waist up to where this marking is. Change the stitch length to a longer stitch length on your sewing machine. Backstitch, keep on stitching up to this opening. Backstitch, change the stitch length to a regular stitch length. Stitch up to the bottom and end with a backstitch. Stitch length has been changed to the longest stitch length on this sewing machine. And then hold on to the thread tails, sink in the needle and backstitch. And continue stitching, removing the pins. There are two pins here, a vertical pin and a horizontal pin, in order to match the skirt yoke seam. Stitch as close to the vertical pin as possible. Remove the vertical pin. If needed, walk the machine using the hand wheel. And remove the pin that is perpendicular to the seam. Stitch up to the marking line and backstitch. Change the stitch length back to a regular stitch length and continue stitching all the way to the bottom of the skirt and backstitch at the end. Sometimes when working with silky fabrics, while trying to backstitch, the fabric gets puckered. In order to prevent the puckering at the end, you can take a piece of any tracing paper and keep it under the fabric and then end with a backstitch. Tracing paper will temporarily stabilize this area and will prevent the fabric from being chewed up by the machine. Make sure thread take-up lever is all the way up. Raise the foot up and pull. To remove the tracing paper, fold the paper on the stitching line to create a crease and then carefully take the paper out. And trim the threads. So this is how it will look after stitching at 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is the basting stitch done up to where this marking is, and then backstitch and continue stitching all the way to the other end and end with a backstitch. After stitching, next step is to check and make sure that the skirt yoke seams are matching at this intersection. First, press the seam as is to embed the seam allowance and then press the seam allowance open. After pressing the seam allowance is open, check from the right side to make sure that the seam lay flat. This is how it will look after pressing. Take the invisible zipper and open the zip. Before inserting the zipper coil needs to be pressed flat. So open the zipper coil with your fingers using the tip of the iron. Press the coil away from the zipper tape using a synthetic setting on the iron. Do not put too much pressure, otherwise it will distort the shape of the zipper tape. Then uncurl the other side of the zipper teeth and press gently using the tip of the iron. After pressing, close the zipper. On the wrong side, mark bottom stop at 7.5 inches on the pressed open seam allowance from top of the waistline. Take the closed zipper, place it face down on the seam allowance. Top of the zipper tape should be lined up with the top of the skirt yoke waistline. Pin in place. While pinning, center of the zipper should be lined up with the center of the seam line. Pin through all the layers. Pin up to a little below the bottom stop. After pinning, transfer the bottom stop marking on the zipper tape. Next step is hand basting. It's done using a single strand of thread. There is a tailor's knot at one end of the thread. Move the skirt yoke panel away so that you only have seam allowance and the zipper tape on one side. Hand baste the zipper tape to the seam allowance only, making small stitches. Hand baste a little closer to the zipper teeth and ½ inch past the bottom stop. And with a couple of back stitches, and trim the thread. Now do the same on the other side. Lay the skirt yoke panel flat and remove the pins. After removing the pins, move the skirt yoke panel away so that you only have seam allowance and the zipper tape on one side. And hand baste zipper tape to the seam allowances only and hand baste from top to bottom. Hand baste a little closer to the zipper teeth hand baste about ½ inch past the bottom stop and with a couple of back stitches and trim the thread. After hand basting, open up the skirt panels so that everything lays flat. Check to make sure that everything looks good. After hand basting, the next step is to remove the machine basting stitches. Remove the machine basting stitches up to where the bottom stop is. Rip one stitch every inch or so. After ripping the machine basted seam, check the other side. Rip the stitches where the bottom stop is, right above the back stitch, and pull the thread. Remove all the excess threads out of the way. After removing the basting stitch from the right side, this is how it's going to look. Next step is to unzip the zipper to a little above the bottom stop. Take either a hemostat or a tweezers, and from underneath the skirt, take the tweezers. Tweezers should go in between the basting stitches to catch the pull tab. So with the tweezers, grab the zipper pull tab and slide it all the way down. You can also use a hemostat if you have one. From underneath the skirt panel, insert the hemostat to grab the pull tab and slide it all the way down. With this method, the slider will be out of the way when sewing the zipper. On the wrong side, you will also notice that the coil will be on the seam line and the zipper tape in the seam allowance.